Welcome back to Amerisogyny. I'm your host, Hannah Blue. You're listening to episode 51, Do Unto Others. Guys, it's raining again. It always seems to be raining when I record, but you know what? We're just going to roll with it, because I have some good stories for you. Today, we're going to talk about the golden rule. People who have followed it and some who haven't. The golden rule was spoke by Jesus in Matthew and Luke. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And diving deeper into it, so in everything, do to others what you would have them do to you. For this sums up the law and the prophets. Matthew 7:12. And I can break it down even further. Treat others as you would like to be treated. You know, I really think most of the world's problems would be solved if we followed that rule. Just treat people right. It's not that hard. But for some, not only is it difficult, it's damn near impossible. Listeners, I know you've got your tickets ready. So let's get ready for our first stop, France. This American woman is waving a huge fist in the air to one of our allies, France, for being a champion for women's rights and passing a historic amendment that protects women's right to have an abortion. Go France! The bill was passed after an impressive 780 to 72 vote. And after the bill was passed, France's upper and lower houses of parliament gave a standing ovation, as they should have. That's right. Article 34 of the Constitution guarantees freedom of every woman in France to have an abortion if they choose it. And that's the key. The freedom to have the choice to decide what happens with a woman's body should rest with the woman, not government. So France got it right. France's President Emmanuel Macron said the amendment would be inscribed in the Constitution on Friday, March 8th, which is International Women's Day, during a ceremony in central Paris. And everyone is welcome to attend. President Macron posted on social media and said the vote was a matter of French pride and a universal message. 34-year-old Prime Minister Gabriel Attal said, "We owe a moral debt to women. When women's rights are attacked in the world, France rises and places itself at the forefront of progress." Attal is the youngest prime minister to serve in the role for France, and he is also the first openly gay man. We applaud France for being a champion for women's rights. Our next stop, Oregon. Now, when it comes to following the golden rule, this dad clearly missed the mark. He drugged his daughter's friends at a sleepover with sedatives, and then, according to the girls, displayed very cringe behavior. Now, this sleepover happened on August 26th, 2023. His name is Michael Maiden, and he's 57. Well, according to police, he made mango smoothies for the girls and laced them with benzodiazepine, a depressant that slows the nervous system. Now, at first, the girls had a fun time. They watched movies and gave each other facials, and then Maiden whipped up the smoothies. Obviously, he didn't mix the drugs well because the girls said the drinks had tiny white chunks throughout and sprinkled on top. And when one girl said she didn't like hers, he forced them to drink them. According to police, as the girls slept in the basement, Maiden kept coming in to check and see if the girls were asleep. At one time, he even held his finger under a girl's nose to see if she was actually asleep. He also moved a girl's arm and moved her body on the bed. One of the girls said she remained awake in fear that Mr. Maiden was going to do something to her friend. Another girl said she felt woozy, hot, and clumsy and fell into a thick, deep sleep that she had never experienced before. These girls were 12 years old. Can you imagine how scared they were? One of them was very smart. She texted her mom at 1:45 a.m. as she was losing consciousness and begged her mom to come and pick her up. She wrote, "Mom, please pick me up and say I had a family emergency. I don't feel safe. I might not respond, but please come and get me." Crying emoji. Please, please pick up. Please, please. And it seems like the mother came to her rescue and also called the families of the other girls to take them home. But when the parents arrived around 3 a.m., Maiden didn't want to let them take the girls home. He knew what he had done, and he knew if the girls' blood levels were tested, he was going to be in big trouble. Well, that's exactly what happened. The girls were taken to Randall Children's Hospital, and in the ER, the girls tested positive for an unknown prescription drug. Police questioned all of the girls and noted that one walked slowly and had to rely on her mother for balance. Her speech was slowed and her eyelids were very heavy. Maiden and his wife divorced last year. Gee, I wonder why. Maybe she knew he was a creeper? Maiden is now facing charges, as he should. He's been charged with causing another person to ingest a controlled substance and application of a controlled substance to the body of another person. He pleaded not guilty, and his bail was set at $50,000. What a sick, twisted man. This is why some parents refuse to send their children for sleepovers. They don't trust anyone, and rightfully so. If Oregon is smart, they'll lock him up. And I promise you, if he goes to prison, he won't be trying to play any games on those big boys in there. Our next stop, Florida, Miami-Dade. You know, that reminds me of the Golden Girls. In my episode on Nostalgia Mania, I forgot to mention the Golden Girls and Married with Children. I don't know how I did that, but my apologies. A Florida woman is accused of slipping a bleach tablet in her boyfriend's tea. Now, she says she thought it was sugar, but police say, not today, Satan. Yvette Diaz is 49 years old, and she was charged with poisoning food or water on February 20th. Now, when their landlord saw she had been arrested, it was shocking. According to the landlord, I don't know what happened with them because they look like a beautiful, very happy couple. Obviously, they weren't that happy if she gave him bleach. Diaz and her male partner had lived together for 3 years. Her partner was getting ready to eat and have a cup of tea when he stepped out of the house to answer a work call. When he came back inside, he offered a bite of his tortilla to Diaz. Then he offered some of his tea, but she declined. I know she did because she knew what was in it. Well, he took a drink and felt a burning sensation, and he also said he smelled bleach inside the cup. According to police, the victim poured the drink into the sink and saw the remains of a concentrated bleach tablet. Now get this, he uses 1 tablet for 5 gallons of water. And that is what she put in his cup. The victim turned to Diaz and said, "There's bleach in this drink. Did you put bleach in my drink?" I doubt he said that as calmly as I just did, but Diaz claimed she thought the tablets were sugar, but police said, due to where the products were stored in the kitchen. Police say the sugar in an upper kitchen cabinet, while the concentrated bleach was kept under the sink. Police have no motive for this crime, and the man was taken to the hospital. I don't know what he did or didn't do to her, but it doesn't matter. That's no way to treat anyone. And I'm glad she's been arrested. As of now, Diaz is being held at the county jail, and that's exactly what she deserves. Now, those were stories about people who have no respect for the living. But what about those who have no respect for the dead? Our next stop, Colorado. Rotting bodies, fake ashes, and body parts for sale. Oh me, oh my. Death, dying, and bereavement is absolutely included in clinical psychology. That was one class in college I didn't like. I didn't like the professor either, but I digress. In a funeral home in Colorado, nearly 200 bodies were found stacked and rotting. Now, how did they get away with that? Colorado has very little regulations for funeral homes. Hundreds of families in Colorado were affected by this. Some learned they were not given the ashes of their loved ones. Instead, they were left in a building to rot away. And in one case, one was found in the back of a hearse. Remember in a previous episode how I said we elect lawmakers to work for us, not the other way around? Well, these families understood the assignment. They lobbied for their lawmakers to unveil a bill that would implement Colorado's first licensing requirements to become a funeral home director. In addition, the bill would bring their licensure rules in line with other states and even outdo some of them. The bill sets requirements for embalmers and cremationists. Senator Dylan Roberts is a Democrat, and he said, too many Colorado families have had to face the gruesome and unacceptable reality that their loved ones' remains have been mishandled, lost, improperly cared for, sold, and completely disrespected. Things have reached a breaking point. Listeners, you may be wondering how in the world this happened. Well, funeral home directors were not required to have a high school diploma. That means anybody and their mama could have been a funeral home director. If the bill passes, and I'm sure it will, a license will require a background check, a degree in mortuary science, and passing of a national exam and an apprenticeship. In February, 190 bodies were found in a bug-infested funeral home, and another body was found in a hearse. She was Christina Rosales. Her body was found in a hearse, covered in blankets, and the only reason she was found, the owner of the funeral home was being evicted. Ms. Rosales passed away at 63 from Alzheimer's disease, and her husband George selected the funeral home because they were friends with the operator. Now that's scary. If this person can do this to a friend, think of what they do to an enemy. Now you can just imagine the devastation Mr. Rosales felt when he learned his late wife's body had been left on a gurney inside of a hearse and that he'd been given somebody else's ashes. Mr. Rosales was in tears when he said, "I've cried many times for her. After 18 months, I thought I was done with this, but it started all over again. I probably wouldn't have found out about my wife's body if he wasn't getting evicted." Colorado wants to introduce another bill that will require routine inspections by regulators, including after a funeral home's registration lapses. And clearly, this funeral home was not having inspections. I can't even imagine the smell. It's imperative that funeral homes should be licensed and inspected. You're dealing with human remains here. That's no way to treat anyone, especially the dead. Now, this story is even more heartbreaking for Sheila Canfield Jones. She kept what she thought was her daughter's ashes for 4 years. She couldn't bear to part with them. But an official took the ashes out of the urn and told Miss Canfield Jones, "It's not your daughter." She said, "He had to keep telling us over and over again." It was horrific. My heart truly goes out to her from one mother to another. What an absolutely despicable thing to do. Ms. Canfield Jones says she has nightmares of her daughter's decomposing body. Now, the owners of the funeral home were finally arrested and now face hundreds of charges. But in 2020, the local coroner had tried to tell on them and nobody listened. Patty Salazar, executive director of the state agency that oversees funeral homes, says, there is a general understanding that things must change. Colorado needs to and will do better by passing this legislation. Let's hope so, because this story was gruesome in more ways than one. Our next stop isn't a state or a country. It's social media. X, to be exact, formerly known as Twitter. I got off Twitter shortly after Elon took over and drove it into the ground, but there's a few remnants left of Black Twitter, and they teamed up to drag a racist podcaster from Angela Davis Avenue to Black Panther Boulevard. And for what? He called actress Halle Bailey, our latest The Little Mermaid, ugly, and compared her to E.T. When I tell you they tore his ass up, they tore his ass up. Elijah Schaffer has a history of making racist remarks on social media. And on March 3rd, Black Twitter removed his foot from his mouth and shoved it straight up his ass. Schaffer thought it would be cute to post a picture of Halle next to E.T. This was another movie that I forgot from the 80s, E.T. And if you grew up in the 80s, you remember the classic phrase, E.T. phone home. Well, it's one thing to have an opinion, but it's totally another to be cruel and toxic. And the mean-spirited energy that Schaffer put out is exactly what he got back. Once he posted the photos, someone said, "Look like your mother with a tan. She is really ugly, bro." And not only did the person post it, they also posted Schaffer with his mom. Well, Schaffer tried to garner some sympathy, explaining that his mom had some facial disfigurement due to a rare cancer, and that she had 60% of her soft tissue removed and huge portions of her jaw carved out in 3 life-saving surgeries. Well, Black Twitter said, and one comment said, "This is what a lot of you cowards do. Disrespect women, then play victim when your women get disrespected back. Stop it with the white fragility. Nobody knew your mom passed. I hope she wasn't alive when you caught that sexual assault charge." Ooh-wee. And then Schaffer got mad and threatened legal action over what he called a defamatory statement. And why? Allegedly, he groped a female colleague's breast at a film premiere without her consent and subsequently was fired from the Blaze in 2022. Black Twitter didn't even spare his girlfriend. One said, "This your girl? Damn, I see why you mad." And then Halle's boyfriend, DDG, got in on the action. I'm not going to say what he said because by now I think you got the picture. People started pulling old posts he made, comparing some Black people to thugs. And as the heat turned up on Schaffer, his ugly racism kept getting worse and worse. He started calling the posters monkeys and crying Black babies. Remember, in a previous episode, I already told you why I hate the word monkeys. It's racist and offensive. Schaffer is so sickening. He posted, "I always thought Black people were better at being savage online, but I've never been more wrong. I can't understand 90% of their DMs. Incoherent ebonics, insults that sound like they're coming from a retarded 6-year-old. Or they just say illegal things. Not surprised here." And he went on. All this over a subpar actress having her eyes spread too far apart? Tribalism isn't a bad thing, but they waste so much time being infuriated with the dumbest shit while their neighborhoods deteriorate and they continue to spike our crime statistics to unseen levels. Chill. But Black Twitter didn't chill. They kept finding more of his old racist tweets. He even said former First Lady Michelle Obama was more of a man than him. And Hallie, like the classy little lady she is, didn't feed into the negativity. She focused on the impact she made on Black girls and women by being the next Little Mermaid. The theme of this episode is to treat others the way you would want to be treated. And if you can't do that, just shut your mouth. Missouri. Now this is something I would expect to see on a crime show. A former principal pleaded guilty in a federal court on February 28th. And what is he being charged with? Hiring a hitman to kill a woman he got pregnant while he was married. I know I'm about to make a lot of side pieces mad, but so be it. These men, these married men that you guys are out here sleeping with, they don't love you. And most times, they never leave their wives for you. Usually, the wife leaves them. And sometimes, like in this case, if you get pregnant, rather than break up with their wife, he'd rather see you dead. And that is just that. Cornelius Green was charged with murder for hire and conspiracy to commit murder for hire in the fatal shooting of his girlfriend, Jocelyn Peters. Now, this happened about 8 years ago. Before he became a lying, cheating woman and baby killer, he was the principal at Carr Lane Visual and Performing Arts Middle School. Now, he was just fine with cheating on his wife, but after Jocelyn got pregnant, he decided to up the ante. He hired his friend, Philip Cutler, to kill Jocelyn for $2,500. He was the principal, and Miss Peters was the teacher. Now, I'm not saying this woman was right for sleeping with this married man. Not at all. But no one deserves to be murdered. Police say Green texted Cutler to travel from Oklahoma to St. Louis in March. So on March 7th, 2016, Green shipped a UPS package that held $2,500. Here's how they set it up. Cutler arrived and stayed at Green's home, but Green made the decision to go to Chicago so that he'd have a good alibi once she was killed. Before he left, he gave Cutler the keys to Peters' house and his car keys. Cutler shot Peters while she was on her bed in her apartment with a .380 caliber gun. He shot her in the head and used a potato as a silencer. Peters was 7 months pregnant. After Cutler told him that the job was done, Green returned to St. Louis, went to Peters' home, and called 911 when he found her body. Well, his plan didn't work as well as he thought it would. Police investigated and somehow linked Cutler to Green. Federal prosecutors want Green to be given life behind bars. I say he should have been given the death penalty because that was premeditated murder. I don't try to preach to anyone because people are going to do what they do, including sleeping with married men and women. But just know, what happened to Miss Peters can happen to you as well. Our last stop, Texas. Finally, a story about people who treat people right and treat them the way they would want to be treated. Chris Armstrong married her husband James in 2016. But this marriage came with a heartwarming deal. Chris had been married before. In 2006, she married a man named Brandon, but he suffered a severe brain injury 2 years later. The accident left Brandon with a reduced mental and physical capacity and unable to care for himself. Chris said she cared for Brandon for years, but finally made the decision to move on with her life. But she didn't want to give up on him. So she divorced him and filed the paperwork to become his legal guardian. When Chris met James, she let him know Brandon came as a package deal, and James was more than happy to help her take care of Brandon. He changes Brandon and even bathes him. They also feed Brandon and take him to his medical appointments. In a previous episode, I told you there are very good people in this country. Chris and James Armstrong are two of them. The fact that she married Brandon, did all she could for him, And no one would have blamed her if she had put him in an institution, but she didn't do it. She chose to keep him at home where he's loved and cared for. If that is not the epitome of the golden rule, then you tell me what is. Here's what's even sweeter to me. James and Chris have kids who love Brandon and call him uncle. Ladies, when you say there are no good men out there, you're wrong. Listen to the story. Although James is happy with Chris, he said he would give it all up in a moment if Brandon recovered. He said if some miracle treatment happens for people with a brain injury and Brandon can be healed, I would want you to be with him. You were with him first. Chris told James, and I don't think that's going to happen, but just the fact that you're a very special person, you really are. And he is a special person, and so is she. And even though Brandon now lives in a nursing home, I don't take that back at all because they gave their all to care for this man and love this man, and they still visit him. James said, even if Chris was no longer around, he would want to take care of Brandon. According to James, I also told her that if anything happens to her or she passes away, I will fight for guardianship. He will have another advocate. That's how you do it, people. That's how you advocate for people with mental and physical disabilities. This is an awesome story. I am inspired and in awe of this couple. May God bless Brandon, James, and Chris. And on that note, and a good one, I must say, I'm out of time. If you learned something from this episode, feel free to follow me. By now you know where. On Podbean, Samsung, Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, and more. The weekend is coming, you guys. So I want you to be easy. Take care of yourselves. Remember to do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And as always, God bless.